Welcome, everybody, back to the Second Page podcast. I'm Joe Oswald. With me, as always, my producer and friend over this way.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 7. It's Jay Martinez with you as always, and the episode today is titled hashtag Screw You Too. It's been a crazy week in politics, thankfully for us, so we have a lot to cover, and we'll jump right in. We're going to start with Al Franken, talk about Jerusalem, the KK,
The Supreme Court.
the Supreme Court, battle going on now with the religious rates and all that.
Masterpiece Bakers.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the debt ceiling, Don Jr., the police murder of Daniel Shaver, and Disney buying Fox. So with that being said, guys, let's jump into it. So, from our pre-week talks and meetings, we're all pretty much in a consensus that neither of us agree with Al Franken resigning, which is not the way the Democratic Party sees it. They saw this as a calculated thing, which, in our opinion, is to take the moral high ground. And I don't think it will work. I think that Al Franken retiring is not going to help the party at all. He's a scapegoat right now, and
Somebody had to take the fall, right?
yeah, someone did have to take the fall, I guess. But again, the Republicans aren't going to jump ship now and say, hey, look, the Democrats are doing the right thing. We're going to stop supporting Roy Moore and we're going to ask for everyone that has ever been accused to step down. And I don't think we're going to win any voters on the left except voters that were already part of our bloc that aren't going to change their vote regardless, which is only the PC police. They're the only ones that really kind of won on this. And Franken has done a lot of good while in the Senate in various departments and with various issues, but he has been an advocate for women in his time in the Senate. Not to excuse any misconduct that he would have had in the past or anything that he has done wrong, but where do we draw this line? Where does it become just about the court of public opinion and, that people, again, all I'm saying, if there's going to be a zero tolerance policy within the Senate and the Congress and everyone should be held accountable, there's people I feel that their heads should have rolled before Franken's. And I think the Democratic Party lost a good leader in Franken when he resigned, and he was visually and noticeably angry, and I think he has a right to be. And I also think these women deserve their time and their day in court to say what they have to say. I know that's never going to happen. They're not gonna get their day in court, but again, I don't know where to draw the line. I think this was a mistake. We're just appeasing people for the sake of taking the moral high ground, and it's not going to push the agenda or make us look more viable into 2018. I don't think it really makes a difference. If you think I'm wrong or if you have a different opinion, guys, jump in. But that's how I feel about it.
Well, honestly, I think I told you before the show started that many of our dozens of viewers and you and Steve might actually be a little bit surprised that some of my opinions on the topics we're about to talk about today might lean a little bit more towards the right than I tend to go over. I've always liked to consider myself a very reasonable person. I do watch, things from all the way from Fox to CNN, MSNBC. I every now and then I peek on Breitbart. I look at Reuters, NPR, BBC, all of that. I try to look at everything from as many angles as possible because not just because I myself don't want to be an ignorant person, but I genuinely like to see, if I'm wrong or if I need to change my viewpoints on something, I need to. And, we did whole segments on sexual harassment, and we did talk at length about the treatment of women in general and the history of that treatment and how men use power to take out this primal urge to control and dominate other people. When it comes to Al Franken, though, I posted something on my personal Facebook, which a couple friends of mine had reposted in an agreement with. And the summary of that post was that I was almost ashamed to call myself a Democrat, or at least registered as a Democrat. I was ashamed that this party that is supposed to be supportive of people advocating for these rights and things like that basically just jumped on this bandwagon to attack Al Franken because he was bleeding in the water. And rather than try and support him to try and show that there is some sort of redemption, that there is an ability to overcome mistakes that you've made in the past, that despite the fact that he apologized to Leon Tweeden, that there were 7 other women that have accused him of such things that were very similar to what he said, and he even said it in his resignation speech, that he remembers some things differently and some things were just flat out lies, but nobody's going to care about what he says. They're going to look at the fact that there are 7 other women on top of Leanne that accused him of very similar things, and that he, despite the fact that he apologized, despite the fact that he has been an advocate for women, that he has been a leader in the Senate, that he has grilled Trump's appointment and nominees, that he has been an advocate for progressive and liberal policies that look to protect everybody, not just residents of Minnesota. I think that it was wrong for people to just bandwagon jump on this get him out of here thing when we're talking about things that are not comparable to the Roy Moore accusations or the Donald Trump accusations of actual physical forced aggression that not only made women uncomfortable but probably cost them their careers, maybe cost them relationships. The things that Al Franken is accused of and the things that he's admitted to were not things that irreparably harmed anybody, and he apologized and his apologies were accepted. The fact that they jumped on this bandwagon to push him out, I hate to say this, but I found myself watching and agreeing for like 30 seconds with Tommy Loren.
Oh shit!
She came on.
Come on.
Look, she commented
man.
on Fox. She commented on Fox, and she's like, "Not every and these are her words, not mine. That not every woman should just be immediately believed with every accusation that they throw out there, just like not every man should be immediately believed with everything that they say too."
Yeah, no, and look, and to that point, I think you're absolutely right. But then it's unfortunate that we can't say that without. I know there's out that whoever's listening or will be listening to this at some point, hearing what you just said and how we're all agreeing, they're going to be pulling out their hair saying, how can a man say that? A man can't understand the plight of a woman.
This is also a group of 3 men.
And that's absolutely right. But I mean, when we say that Franken has done good, maybe some people might not be aware of it, but Franken has been instrumental in passing very good bills that have helped across the board people of all types. He was instrumental in healthcare with Wall Street reform after the collapse in 2008. He's been instrumental in passing laws in his home state of Minnesota and assisting in mental health schools. He's been instrumental in fighting the No Child Left Behind, net neutrality, and he passed, or he was instrumental in also passing a law in the Senate for women in Minnesota.
He was also instrumental in
calling out Jeff Sessions and his bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exposing Jeff Sessions
for the lying
that
bastard that he is. Yeah. So again, it's hard to draw that line. I'm not saying he's innocent of what he's being accused of. I'm not calling the women liars. It's just,
anything
how does a
after
skill way out?
You understand, like anything like
after butt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. And I'm gonna be that guy just because like somebody has to be the devil's advocate here.
All right.
I probably personally more agree with both of you than I don't. And I said this before we turned on the cameras, which is, there's an old African proverb that says, the axe forgets, but the tree remembers.
Yep.
Right? In that, maybe this wasn't a big deal to Al Franken. Maybe it's not a big deal for us because we don't have the purview that a woman has to deal with living in this patriarchal, what some people call rape culture. And so maybe a grope while you're taking a picture or a tongue down a throat during a kiss rehearsal, maybe that's nothing. But maybe to us it's nothing. But maybe it has traumatized the people who say they are victims. Now, that said, what is the bar? And so because a person has done good, Bill Cosby has done a lot of good. Do we say that, well, he's done a lot of good? I mean,
he drugs people.
He rapes too, but he's done good. To quote Dave Chappelle.
Again, that's not comparable.
It's not comparable.
But I guess my point is, are we making, because we like what he's done as a person, do we overlook that? And I say that to you. There is an instance where someone accused Al Franken of groping them while their husband was taking a picture. Now, Jay, you're a married man. Yep. Joe, you have a girlfriend. What if it was your girlfriend or your wife that you were taking a picture of this congressman, and they sort of grabbed your wife's?
Oh, I'd be fucking pissed. But why wasn't it? I mean, I don't know. Was it addressed in that moment? I mean,
Yeah, but
it
I
should have
mean,
been
again, if we're going by whether something was addressed in the moment, like that's a lot of things that people call out like
yeah.
victims for, like why didn't you say it at the time? Maybe it was harder to say at the time. Maybe they have the courage to come forward now. That doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
I, you know what? I don't like how uncomfortable talking about this makes me feel,
But
and
isn't that the
and
point though?
it is a
Shouldn't
point.
it be
No,
uncomfortable?
it is, and it shouldn't be uncomfortable to a point where we shouldn't talk about it because there's a lot of people out there that probably prefer not to talk about it. But and that's where my gripe comes with the PC police is this that the questions you're asking are legitimate, the thought processes we're having I think are legitimate, and I think we have to naturally go through all these thought processes, whether they're right, wrong, miscalculated, or whatever, to get to an answer. But right now, the way society is, the way the left and the right are at extremes, is that we can't ask these questions. We can't have these thoughts. We have to be at the point where we're like, these women are right. They were victims. Heads must roll. This is a new game in town. We're the new sheriffs in town. Public opinion. We will crucify whoever's being accused without any due process. And I understand that there isn't a legal way for some of these women to go after them. I get it. I get that it's not easy being a woman as much as I can being a man in this society. Of course, I could never fully understand, but when we're losing who we perceive to be a good senator, a good advocate for at least what we believe, to be good, good laws for pushing for good reform, for helping minorities and women, then what does that mean? I mean, this seat wasn't up for reelection until 2020. It's in play now in 2018, where there's I think now 26 Senate seats up in play for Democrats, when I think only the Republicans are defending 5. So I mean, we're just making it harder on ourselves. The GOP is not going to change their support of Mr. Pedophile Roy Moore just because Al Franken decided to step down and take the moral ground. There's also a very interesting stat that I found this week, which out of all the men and women in Congress, 14% of women make up the Democratic Party, and only 5% of women make up the Republican Party. So both numbers are supremely low. It's not indicative or representative of the amount of women in our country now, and that has to be fixed. But maybe can we say that the amount of women in the Democratic Party maybe strong armed the party into doing this? It's good, I guess, that they did. They're standing up. Kamala Harris, Kristen Gillibrand, they came out against it. But to what detriment of the party? You had a very good anecdote before we started about Gillibrand and her book, and when people asked her to name names, she wouldn't. So I mean, can you walk us down through that? Because I think that's a perfect example of what's happening now.
So I I brought up the point that Kirsten Gillibrand also, she wrote a book, and she sort of chronicled her experiences as being new to the Senate, and some of the lewd comments that she had sort of endured while she was a sort of a freshman senator.
Yeah.
And people called her things like sugar tits and some more provocative language. And
you could say
a lot of people sort of asked her, well, why don't you name names? And at the time she didn't, because she said these are otherwise good people, they haven't done it again, and she didn't think it would be constructive to do so. So now when we are in this Me Too movement, she sort of, and she said this, she said that she wanted to let it play out, but with all the new accusations, because it's not just the USO incident. Apparently there are like 8 women that have come out and accused
with pretty consistent
Franken.
stories apparently.
Now, so now that she sort of feels comfortable enough to speak out about this, or enraged enough, I guess the next question is, well, you said that these were multiple senators. What are their names? That said, maybe now is just the time, and I guess we have to ask ourselves, how far back, right? So if these are the new rules, like this is not accepted anymore, and one could argue, when was this ever accepted? When was this ever acceptable? If these are the new rules, how far back do we go? So, we talked about this before the show started, but like this is sort of like an ex post facto thing. So this was sort of accepted behavior, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
No,
some of it.
I don't
Now,
think it's wrong to say it was. It was not that it's right that it was, but it was.
but I mean, was it ever okay for what like Conyers did?
Of course not.
Well,
So-
it wasn't
No,
ever
no.
okay morally.
Morally,
It
it
was,
was just-
always okay in that if anybody said it, nobody was going to come after them. And now we live in a time where everything that you say can be immediately broadcasted to anybody in the world 5 seconds after you said it. Now, when I see Democrats going after Al Franken, when I see Republicans going after Al Franken, I say to myself, obviously, I know that these are just political games. That it's all positioning, it's all a circus. So my question is, it's not that, what do we believe the women or do we not? Do we punish the men or do we not? It's about the hypocrisy of it. It's about following through on your convictions. When you talk about Kirsten Gillibrand not wanting to name names because she doesn't want to hurt people who are otherwise good people, most of these women that have these accusations leveled against Al Franken really just remarked about how overly friendly he was and how he maybe was inappropriate, but not in a malicious way. He wasn't preying on a 14-year-old girl at a shopping mall.
He's Joe
He
Biden
wasn't-
inappropriate.
Exactly. He wasn't saying that he could grab them by whatever part he wanted to just because he was a celebrity. I mean, when you scapegoat and make a martyr out of someone like Al Franken, you are basically attacking yourself, because I don't see any Democrats looking to make like a national agency where any person in the entire country can call in, like the Consumer Financial Protection Board. Why don't we have a women's protection board or a sexual harassment protection board where anybody in the country can call in, report sexual harassment, especially because many, probably a large majority of companies don't have HR departments, or if it's your employer that's the one that's harassing you, or if you feel like there's no outlet for you, that your state isn't providing for you, that's where the federal government comes in. Just to have an outlet, just to have a place where you can report. I mean, we have a Better Business Bureau, but we can't report sexual harassment on the job.
Absolutely.
To the point where you
Yep.
have to wait 10, 15 years for when a whole bunch of
I
other
mean,
people
hang
come
on,
out
though.
and say it, and then you have to feel like you can't say anything until you have enough people behind you that you won't be attacked.
But
I mean, these
HR
Roy Moore accusers are being threatened on a regular basis because they came out and said something. So it's legitimate that there are fears against these things. You don't see the minority party, which doesn't need subpoena power to hold hearings. They don't need to have the majority say it's okay to call a congressional hearing, to bring in the women that accuse Donald Trump of things, to bring in the women that accuse Al Franken or Roy Moore if he gets elected. They don't need the majority to do that, but they're not doing it because they're just positioning themselves to look like the party that's against this, while the Republicans are the ones that support it.
Yeah.
And they want to draw this dividing line without actually following through on these convictions.
But there is legislation trying to be pushed forward in the Senate
Yes.
right now about women that accuse senators, and there are
we
avenues.
talked about that at the last episode. I know that.
There
The
are
Me Too Act.
avenues, but I mean they're acting on it, right?
Yeah.
So
But then again, what you just brought up, then how far back do we go? And,
Right.
and so are we gonna have a zero tolerance policy in the Senate and Congress, and everyone has to abide by it and fall under it, or are we just gonna pick and choose whose career ends on whose statement
well,
comes out?
here's my
So we
problem.
might have Roy Moore win on Tuesday, and we're gonna have a pedophile in the Senate, but Al Franken's gone.
Also a blatant racist who thinks times
That-
were better during slavery. We'll get to
Yeah.
that in a second. But I guess my issue here is the lack of due process. Right? Now, Franken admitted and apologized for the first instance, and he submitted himself to an ethics investigation.
Yeah.
And are we setting a precedent where we are not going to let an ethics investigation play out? We are going to look at accusations and based solely on an accusation, just say that a person, their sort of career needs to end. And that's sort of where I have the problem with it. And I don't know if that's a road that we want to go down. And that is irrespective of the person or the charge. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why not let the ethics investigation play out? And if the ethics investigation finds that he has behaved unbecomingly of a senator or inappropriately, then you take punitive action. But I am very weird about, okay, someone made an accusation, because couldn't we? And I'm not saying that this is the case, but if we're talking about setting precedents, if another candidate is running and I don't like him, can I just say, you know what? I don't like that guy. That guy or woman
Yeah.
did something to me. And now, based off that accusation, they've got to go.
Yes,
People do that all the time. That's why people
yeah.
said that Hillary Clinton had a child sex trafficking ring under a pizza shop.
Wait,
But-
she
You can
didn't?
say whatever
Which
you
you did.
want, and people will. There will be a certain
Okay.
degree of people that will
But
believe
if
it.
but if we're gonna keep this fair, Roy Moore, one of his accusers, came out and pretty much she forged the.
No. Well, don't say that, because that's a blatant misrepresentation of what happened.
But she's not showing it.
No, she is showing it. She has said that she made a notation after his signature
Okay.
to show, so that she could remember when it happened and who it was, because it affected her so much that she had to remember that. Now, a legitimate and unbiased, unrelated, and independent handwriting analysis proved that it is Roy Moore's signature, that it is his handwriting. She made the notation. She admitted to making the notations after the quote.
Okay.
To say that it's a forgery, that's a deliberate
Okay.
misrepresentation.
Okay, so my apologies, but whatever. My point of bringing Roy Moore up was this: look, as much as I don't like the guy, as much as I do believe that he might be a pedophile with everything that's been proven or that has been said about him for years, whatever. The point is, at the end of the day, Alabamians, whatever, should speak and they should vote. He's not representing New Jersey. He's not representing New York. Al Franken, to that point, he's beholden to the people that voted for him in Minnesota.
And that's what Newt Gingrich said.
Yeah, there's ways to get people out of office. If his constituents really believed all this or wanted him out, Minnesotans could have had a recall vote. They could have had a snap or special election, whatever you call it, and it's not a snap election, special election, and kick them out of office. But why is the rest of the country who doesn't vote for a senator jumping in on this, and then he's losing? New Jersey
here's the thing.
and
Franken was a political plot.
Of course.
Prop.
Yeah,
Prop.
of course.
And this is, again,
It is a miscalculation by the Democrats.
I am making this statement. I'm not passing any judgment on whether he should or should not have gone. He was pushed out so that in the next election, the Democrats can point to the Republicans supporting Trump and Moore, and they can point to say that we expel our own when this happens, but you guys support these guys.
Which means shit to the GOP.
No, and again,
It
as a
doesn't mean
political
anything.
calculation, I don't know. Maybe it makes good for optics for preaching to the converted who are already going to vote for you just to get
The peace
Trump out of office anyway. But I think that we can't. I think it was a political mistake, and I also think that Roy Moore should be allowed to run.
Yep.
Right. Let the people of Alabama show who they are, because this guy has done and said enough things that you don't even need the child molestation accusations, right? This is in September. This is not in the 60s. A black person asked him at a campaign rally, when do you think America was great? And he says, America was great as it relates to slavery, back when even though we had slaves, our families were more united. So he thinks America was great when America had slaves.
Yep.
And if you still if you don't believe any of the child molestation or the getting kicked out of a mall or banned from a mall, if you don't believe any of that,
That should
if
be
you can
bad
still
enough
vote
in
for him
itself.
after saying that, if you can still vote for him after saying Keith Ellison has no place in the Senate because he is a Muslim,
Yep.
if you think that he is qualified to be a senator, if he thinks that 9/11 was brought down on us by God because we
of the
support
gays.
evil and the gays.
Sounds
If
like
you think
the
that
Westboro Baptist.
that is enough for him not to be qualified, and if you
No, of
want to vote
course.
for him anyway, that says everything about you. So let the people vote and let them show.
Yeah, and there's
let
ways to
show
get
their
him out of
face.
office once he's in the
But-
Senate,
but-
and the Senate can take that on themselves. If they want to go through the ethics committee, like you just said, if they want to expel
But
him
even
out,
then,
that's
that is
But then
that's
it doesn't-
very weird, because now the people just voted him in,
and the people have spoken, and
Well,
then the government
that's the same
side.
argument for impeaching Donald Trump, is saying, well, he was elected even if it wasn't by a majority. They elected him, and to impeach him, it just looks like an inside hit job, which is why there are so many people advocating for him to not run, to drop out, to not be allowed to be a senator in the first place, because then you open a whole different can of worms if he actually does get elected, and it looks like he might get that job.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, that, when you talk about Al Franken, you talk about how, Roy Moore suggests that this was a political inside hit job. And that goes to the same respect that Al Franken, when it comes to Leanne Tweeden, how people like Roger Moore knew that she was going to do it ahead of time. where they were just looking to go after the big names, where it was a tit for tat kind of thing, where you have your Conyers and then you have your Representative Franks, the Republican congressman who stepped down because he was being accused of offering $5 million for some of his assistants to carry to be a surrogate for his children. And then the religious people on the right and the GOPers who do not care about hypocrisy. I mean, they passed a tax bill that is a completely opposite of what is good for the regular American people and for the average voter. They don't care about hypocrisy. They haven't since George Bush, probably even before that. I didn't graduate high school until 2005, so I really wasn't that involved. I grew up in the post 9/11 world where everything changed in front of everybody, where all we knew was that America's been at war since I was in high school. And now I'm, part of a podcast where we're talking about everything as if this is brand new. People like Al Franken are going to always suffer, especially when they're on top. When you write a book, the giant of the Senate, you're obviously going to have a target on your back from Republicans and from Democrats. People like Hillary Clinton, who ever since her days in Arkansas when Bill Clinton was governor, have just been under relentless assault from the right, whether true or exaggerated or just completely and blatantly false. These things will stay with people over time, and they will just completely destroy a person's reputation and the view of them. So while my personal view about Al Franken is that he was pushed out and unwarrantedly attacked for something that he didn't do while he was a senator, that he didn't think he was going to be in political office when these things
there
occurred.
was some accusations while he was a senator, but again, it was...
Exactly. And most of these things, again, he said he refutes them, but it doesn't matter if he refutes them because he's already been tried and convicted in the Democratic Party and in the court of public opinion. So he resigns because he, as a good person, as we've already said, as an advocate for progressive values and for these kind of rights, and like we said, setting up things, he says he doesn't want to be a distraction. He thinks the ethics committee will distract him from being able to be a good senator for the people of Minnesota, the over 1 million people that voted for him in the last election. And that is another honorable thing. So what he does as a private citizen, I don't know. I certainly hope that he follows through, saying that he will remain an advocate for these kind of things. But I mean, while he was giving his speech, I was listening to, and I understood the irony before he even used the word irony, that he's leaving while an admitted sexual assaulter and possible rapist sits in the Oval Office, and where a new one might be coming in on the other end, and the GOP doesn't say a thing about it. These are people who pass a tax bill that doesn't give anything to the right to average citizens, to the 90% of the population, 60 plus million of them who voted for Donald Trump and voted for these specific Republicans in their districts. They have no problem with letting Donald Trump spend $30 million on golf trips, but want to take money out of the budgets for veterans, want to take money out of the budget for children's health insurance, who think that entitlements like Social Security and Medicare, things that come out of our paychecks, is somehow a government-sponsored entitlement that needs to be cut to save the budget, because I'll be expecting a refund for all the money I've been paying in since I was 14 years old. Because that's not an entitlement to me, that's an insurance. I buy my health insurance the same way that I pay for Social Security. These are people who do not care about hypocrisy. They don't care about what they look like except during primaries, and all they want to do is make sure that they are carrying the biggest cross, that they are carrying the most of God's opinions on their shoulders, that they are the whitest they can be, and that they are the most pro-gun, anti-abortion as they possibly can, because the way districts are gerrymandered is in their favor and in the favor of those types of opinions. So people like Al Franken, they're already out the door because Democrats are perfectly willing to. I mean, there's an old joke that goes, what's the difference between a cannibal and a liberal? Is that cannibals only eat their enemies?
Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, as someone who has identified as a somewhat more liberal, or, progressive or Democrat-leaning person, I do see that there is not so much an irony but a coincidence in that, because that's what the blood in the water was right there, and rather than help heal the wounds, they cut his head off.
Look,
okay, so we should move on to the next topics, but I do have one question to ask both of you guys. Should Franken have apologized and admitted it? Now, and here's the thing, because he said it in his sort of farewell sort of fuck you speech, which is because he had apologized, people assumed that everything that was thrown at him was true.
Yeah.
And he says some of the accusations were blatantly false and others he remembers differently. Yeah. Now, again, what is the line that they're running with? He admitted it.
Okay, look.
Right? And the reason I ask is, should he have apologized, is effectively what would have served him better? Should he have just been defiant and denied it all, or or is it he gave an inch so everyone took a mile?
I will tell you why it was wrong and right. It was right in the state of the world as it is today. It was wrong in the sense that if he truly, truly, truly feels he didn't do anything wrong, or he can't remember, he can't recall, again, this shouldn't happen, or he shouldn't be brought down in the court of public opinion. He should have his day somehow, to have his way. But look, this is where my gripe is with the PC police, which is why I think his apology was made. Is to appease the extreme left of the extreme left wing of the Democratic Party. And I briefly want to quote an article I read by Mark Berlin, who is a professor and a right-wing commentator. And I know some people are going to not like this, but I agree with the guy. So he says that Trump, quote, Trump has an invincible ally at the far end of the ideological spectrum. I don't mean the extreme right, the nationalists, the paleo-conservatives, and fringe groups that the media relentlessly ties the president to. He has better friends at the other pole, people on the far left who see the world only through the lens of race, gender, sexuality, and victimhood. And we could tie that into the whole issue that Doug Johnson's having in Alabama with the campaign poster that he put out, saying that if a black man was accused of all this, would they be voting for him? It kind of comes off as tone deaf, and that Democrats only put people in blocks. If you're a woman, we're not talking to you about the economics, about the school system. We're talking to you about gender equality. We're talking to you about equal pay. We're talking to you about, sexism in the workplace. If you're black, we're going to talk to you about the incarceration rate in the United States. We're going to talk to you about poverty in inner cities. If you're Hispanic, the same thing. So, and then when they only show up every 4 years to do so and don't carry out their promises, there is this inherent feel within the community that you're not really there for us all the time until you need us. And then it gives fodder to the right to say that the Democrats are hypocrites. And can you really say they're wrong? So I think that this feeling of the left that they're only looking at things through this lens made it easier and made it more, I guess, probable or whatever that Franken had to take the step. So I personally don't think he should have apologized, but in the climate of today, he had to apologize, and that made him look guilty.
Now, we just got a comment in from Omar Stewie. He says, we cannot say, he says that Al Franken resigned, so he interrupted the due process, not the Democrats. But, I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, he was forced to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's not he wanted to do.
He was visibly angry as he was resigning. I mean, he still didn't nudge. He still said that he's not agreeing with this. He doesn't think he did anything wrong or whatever. And again, it's the party forced him out. And I don't know. I would have fought it if I was him. I would have said, let's take it to the ethics committee. I've been open about this. I'm willing to, do whatever it takes to prove my innocence. And if in that case his innocence wasn't proven, then hey, by all means, resign. I'm not going to argue you then. But when there's still people like Roy Moore, Donald Trump in office, but then Conyers and Franken are resigning. And you know what? I'm sorry. Conyers should be gone, in my opinion.
Okay.
But it's just not. I don't think it's politically right at the moment.
To shortly answer the question that Steve had asked, yes, I think that he should have apologized, and yes, I agree with that he apologized, both me personally and as a whole. I mean, this is a person who has made a career in politics on being somewhat transparent and being truthful and true to his convictions. If he genuinely believes that these things are wrong and that he is genuinely sorry for them, then yes, he absolutely should say it.
But he apologized for something he didn't do.
He didn't apologize for something he didn't do. He apologized for making someone feel uncomfortable. He apologized because his actions, although he interpreted what his interpretation was different, his actions made another person uncomfortable. So that is why I think that it was okay to do. What I don't think was okay was that even after he apologized, even after he was forgiven, even after the accusations leveled against him were challenged and he had an ethics commission going on, his party banded together against him, even people who had originally said that he shouldn't have to resign. The House Democrats got all upset, including the Congressional Black Caucus, because they said that they were forced to push Conyers out, while at the same time Franken was still sitting there fiddling his thumbs about whether to resign or not. It was political. It was a move that he was forced out. That is how due process was interrupted. It was interrupted by partisanship. Now, I would love to see Democrats propose the rules within the Senate or rules within the House that do immediately require someone to go under an ethics investigation, regardless of their party, regardless of what they contend happened or regardless of the accusations. I'd love to see them write a rule that says you have to submit to these kind of things, and that those could be grounds for immediately having a removal hearing where 2/3 of the body or 3/4 of the body have to vote to expel you, which is what some Republicans, including Mitch McConnell, said that they would do about Roy Moore if he got elected. That they would vote to expel him.
But that was
at
when
the
they
same
thought
time,
it would.
exactly. Now they
And that's
now
what the
they've
RNC
started,
wasn't backing him, but now they are.
and now they've started refunding him again $150,000 to his campaign
because they know they need him there to pass
and
that.
the election is
before
on
Christmas.
Tuesday, and not that they really need him, because I mean it's not going to change the balance in the House, or rather in the Senate. There's still going to be 51 Republicans there, and there's still going to be 49 Democrats because the governor of Minnesota is a Democrat.
Yeah.
But when you get into the Conyers case, he was the only representative for the district that encompasses the city of Detroit, and the Republican governor of that
Pushed back
state
the election to
decided to
2018.
push the election all the way to the general election because he says he wants to save taxpayer dollars. Something that is completely ridiculous when you see the kind of things that they're spending and cutting on, when you need to have a representative. You need to have a voice in Congress for these people. I mean, it's different because it's not like a senator where you appoint a replacement with a House representative. You have to have a special election. He's deliberately using his power, just like the Republicans used their power to prevent Barack Obama from being able to have Merrick Garland on the court. I mean, it's ridiculous.
You love to bring this up. Every episode. You're so
Gorsuch
passionate
is
about
sitting in a
this.
stolen seat, and I will never ever stop thinking that until the day that man dies in office.
So is it safe
the-
to say
the-
that before we move forward that none of us are in agreement with Franken resigning? Could you leave it at that? For
I'm
various
definitely
reasons.
not in agreement. We got one more comment on this.
Okay, what's up?
And Omar Stewie asks again, could Trump be forced to resign?
No.
And the answer is no.
No.
Yes,
Absolutely.
the answer
And-
is
and
yes.
you
I'm
have
the one
to-
with the Constitution
you-
here. The answer is yes. The
You could
25th
be-
You
Amendment.
can
Wants to
impeach him, but you
resign.
can't force him to
Everybody,
resign.
everybody, calm down. I call for regular order.
Order.
I'm the one holding the
Order, yeah.
Constitution because I knew that this would come up. And yes, he can be forced out. It is in the 25th Amendment that if the
By his
Vice
cabinet.
President,
And his
would you let me finish?
Sorry.
If the Vice President and a majority of the executive officers, his chief of staff, and a majority of those people around him submit a letter to the President of the Senate pro tempore, if they go to the Senate and say the President is unable to discharge his duties, then immediately the President is basically suspended and the Vice President is in charge until the President then responds back to the Senate saying, I can do my job. If he says he can do his job, it then flips back to him. He's back in charge again, unless then when the Vice President would then have to resubmit what they basically said, he's unable to discharge his duties, and then both the House and the Senate would have to vote with a 3/4 majority. That, and it's not an impeachment. They would both have to vote. It's not, there's no trial. They just both vote. Can the President discharge his duties? And he would then, if that were in the affirmative of 3/4, which you would never get in this Congress right now, he could then be removed from office for the inability to discharge his own duties, and that could be mental incapacitation. That could be the things like Al Green brought up, that he's brought disrepute and whatnot to the office. So yes, he can be forced out.
I love you, but I don't think that's what that guy meant.
That
He's
being
not
forced
fantasy.
out and
It's not-
being impeached or
It's not
indicted,
impeached.
that's not but that's not what I'm saying. Even if you go with what, I don't know what article that is.
25th Amendment.
Now, even if you went with the 25th Amendment, that's not him resigning. That's him being forced out. Now, when you force someone to resign, I think that is a way to save face, and you would have to have face in the first place, and Trump has no humility, so no, he would not resign. You would literally have to force him out.
That's exactly what the 25th
Right,
Amendment
but that's
says.
different from forcing him to resign.
but
Like,
even-
Al Franken didn't have to leave.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense for him to stay.
But back to the Trump thing though. Regardless of the 25th Amendment, unless something ridiculously crazy happens, that's not happening. It's fantasy land. Everyone is in his executive branch. Pence won't. It's bad political capital for them. They're gonna lose all of his base voters, and then they're just gonna lose everything. So it's not gonna happen. I mean, can it happen? Yes. You're explaining the law. It won't happen. Trump is not going to be.
I mean,
forced to
that's
resign.
just. I mean, you can
You know,
put
they
that in the
try
same
to-
category
they
as saying
try
he
to put
can't
ar-
be impeached
they
because
try
the
to put-
Republicans control the House.
But not even the Democrats didn't vote for the articles of impeachment this week because again they don't really have a strong
They
case
said
at
it
the
was
moment.
premature.
It was premature. So again, just hold your horses. I don't think he's gonna end up being impeached. I hope.
I'm
he ends
answering
up not
Omar's
winning in
question, and
2020.
I'm answering it with an actual fact rather than an
Okay.
opinion.
All right. You're right. Anyways, should
Right,
we move
but
on
that
to
still
Jerusalem?
Yes.
wouldn't be him resigning.
It would
Right,
not, and
no.
exactly. But the question was, can he be forced out?
No,
Forced is
his
different
literal
than resigning.
question was...
Because I can't see the question.
Oh, yeah. No. It's cool. No, but his question was, could he be forced to resign? I guess he means what you're saying. which is then yes, he could be forced out.
There's
but
a law
he
in
has
place.
no humility where he would resign even if he wasn't effective, which is
Agreed.
what
Yeah.
I was trying to say. Now,
So Jerusalem, if I forget you.
Jerusalem.
yes,
Little
So,
modest Yahoo reference.
Who's starting this one off? Who wants to take this one?
You know,
okay?
I think that I think I'll take the head on this one, but
All right,
it will
Joseph.
require a lot of input from everybody. And again, I'd like to say to anybody watching, even if you are watching this after we've already aired live, you're more than welcome to submit questions and comments. We appreciate people like Omar, like my friend Alex before, like your brother.
Ronnie, he's watching right now.
Yeah, anybody that's watching, your participation is exactly what we want in this kind of a show. That it doesn't need to just be the three of us talking. That's not what it was meant to be. So, with regards to Jerusalem, I was of the opinion at first that I was not totally against Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel because it is the capital of Israel. And even though we had to pass a law back in, I think, 1996 declaring it, there was that waiver that every 6 months the president had to sign saying that we would not move the embassy because of a security concern. And every president since then has signed that waiver every 6 months. So it's been signed 40 times, or whatever, give or take. The moving from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is completely and 100% a political circus move where I believe, me personally believe, that the president decided to make this decision because we're coming up on the waiver time. He has a deadline. And, Trump loves deadlines. I think ISIS was supposed to be defeated within 60 days, right? 30 days. So he has a mandated deadline to sign this waiver. He decides not to sign the waiver and wants to look like he's the one doing it, like it was always him and he's the one that's deciding that Jerusalem is capital. It doesn't matter that Israel has claimed this as their capital or Palestinians have claimed it as their capital. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world thinks. Only America is allowed to declare these things.
sorry, it's America.
America. I used to have that shirt. But
MAGA.
so doing this is basically Donald Trump knowing full well, because all of his advisors that advise against this, world leaders, the Pope, I mean, everybody said that this was a
His
bad
own
idea.
Secretary of State, I think.
Exactly,
So,
that this was going to cause problems.
Yeah.
This would completely interrupt the peace process, and that it would cause violence. And it did. It caused violence, and he knew that would happen. He's an evil genius. He knew it would happen. He knew that these images would be broadcast everywhere of these violent, unruly Muslims taking to the street, burning American flags, down with Israel, down with the
you
U.S.
have a picture, right?
These are things that he wants his supporters to see. He wants them to know that Islam is out to get us. He wants them to know that there's this jihad coming for us. That's why he rebroadcasted those far right-wing videos from England, the Britain First videos thing that every single Muslim in the world is out to kill every single Judeo-Christian white person, capitalist, freedom lover, whatever. These images are exactly what he wants. He wants there to be conflict. He wants to be the one that gets to step in. He is a person who, as a megalomaniac and a narcissist, sitting on top of the largest and most powerful military in the world, absolutely wants to use that power, but he just can't. He's just this far away from being able to just go in there and say, I'm the commander-in-chief, I've got that army, I've got a navy, I've got an air force, I'm going to use all of them, I'm going to go in there. The evangelicals are completely on his side because they want to usher in the Armageddon. They think that
they want them to topple the Temple Mount.
Exactly. They want to rebuild the temple, the Jewish temple, over top of a holy Muslim site. And, in the book of Revelations, I think...
usher in the end of days.
Exactly. You usher in the end of days.
Because
You
they
bring
think
the
they're so
apocalypse.
morally right that they're not going to go up in the rapture.
These evangelicals cheering this on are doing so, again, in an egotistical fashion, so that they can say, okay, so what if it really does happen? If the end of days comes because of this, and the earth starts opening up, and the sky rains fire and blood, and 4 horsemen are running around just spearing people and dragging them to hell, or the rapture comes and starts lifting everybody out of their clothes and taking them to heaven, and they're just going to be like, aha, I told you Jesus was real, I told you, I was right, and then boom, they burst into flames and go straight to hell
because
for being an egotistical bastard. For putting themselves and their own egos ahead of their actual true beliefs. There is no war on Christmas. There is no war on Christianity. There is no real reason to be afraid of these people or to say that
asking for equality for all different religions and people is a war on Christianity and white people.
But,
at least that's the way they.
But Donald Trump wants his supporters to see these things, and that's why he decided unilaterally without taking any advice from anybody because he doesn't believe that anybody's opinion matters but his own. And he said that. I'm not just making that up. I'm not Trump bashing. I actually partly agreed with him until I realized I'm a reasonable person, and I've been on Model UN things, and I've read other countries' constitutions. I've read international law. The city is contested, and the only way for it to not be contested is for the ones contesting it to come to an agreement. And if the United States, having been a neutral arbiter in mediation between the Palestinians and the Israelis, now very openly sides with one, they cannot be the neutral arbiter anymore. There's no mediation. There's no saying that there can be peace when you're saying that one side is right over the other. We've basically said, no, we're right, you're wrong. I don't care what 195 other countries say. I don't care what Israel says or Palestine says. This is what we're going to do.
Let me ask you guys a question, and this is a serious. I want to just take a moment here. What the fuck is Jared Kushner doing? What is his role here?
Well, there is no more role. His role was to, I guess, usher in a deal and be the, I don't know what qualified him to be that person.
I mean, is he just trying to help the Israelis build more settlements?
Yeah,
or
as a
something?
35, 36-year-old real estate developer, then married into the Trump family. All of a sudden,
made his wealth from selling 666 park.
I'm just, I don't know. I mean, aside from Kushner, which he shouldn't have any role in this, I initially was very against this when I first heard of it, when I first thought it was going to happen, and then it did happen. I was upset. Then speaking with some people who feel differently about it, reading about some things I had known but not really known about the Law 96. I don't, I guess I'm with Joe. I don't know if it's the worst thing in the world. It is a capital, but we're now forfeiting our right to be the arbiters in this and to, work out a peace deal, and maybe that is what Trump wants. I mean, Trump campaigned on that we're not going to be at the forefront of global politics. We're not going to be leading the world anymore. And if anything, then I guess he's sticking to his guns in that aspect. It is going to usher in violence, which I think is a big deal. We're already seeing it. Europe is positioning themselves to recognize it as a Palestinian capital. So, I mean, divisions are being drawn, lines are being drawn. I don't know where it will go, but also to Trump, or at least some of the arguments on the right, nothing's changed. I mean, this has been pushed back time after time, and we're still in the same position.
We're looking at World War Cube.
Here's the thing.
So instead of a sphere, instead of a globe, it's a cube. World War III, it's World War cubed, and it's just going to be former allies versus each other, and people that used to hate each other now on the same side. You're going to have all the Arabs jumping together with the Palestinians to condemn the Israeli state and to re-condemn America, even though we're supposed to be allies with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and Jordan and all these other places. Are supposed to respect human rights and freedom of religion, but only when it's not in America. These are things that this president had campaigned on, and you have to give him credit for following through on a lot of the admittedly ridiculous and hateful and hurtful things that he said and done. He is following through on them. He is doing things like saying they would move he did say on the campaign trail, I'm going to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He's going ahead with it. He's going to go ahead with these tax cuts, even though he lied about what kind of cuts there was going to be and who was going to benefit. He did still go ahead with them. He said a lot of things, and he's going to follow through with them. And we all said, there's no way. We're not going to let this happen. There's good people. We're not going to let this happen. But people thought that Nazi Germany would never actually be a thing. They were like, Nazis are never going to take over.
You sound like Obama now.
I wish I sounded like Obama. I'd probably be president.
Here's the thing. So there are arguments for doing this, and Obama said he would do it, and Bush Jr. said he would do it. I think all the way back to Bush Sr. The thing is, there's a reason they came in and didn't do it. Right? It's not that, like, I'm going to tell you a campaign lie. You come in and you see the facts on the ground and you realize you can't do it. The same way Obama wanted to close Gitmo, but the facts on the ground and the legalities showed him that, this is not a thing that is feasible in the time he wanted to do it. Now, if you can tell me that, yes, it was a campaign promise and people should deliver on their campaign promises, but if you can tell me what was the end goal of doing this, then great, and that there was a broader strategy to this other than I'm going to piss people off and I said I can do it and technically I can do it, so I will do it. What benefit does this gain, right? What is gained by doing this now?
He's shaking up the status quo, I guess, and seeing where things land. And I mean, Ronnie, my brother, just commented, "Can it be a political stunt to gain support for his Muslim ban?" I think Joe pretty much answered that with your comments that, he's getting that optic vision. He's getting those optics out right now in the media of angry Muslims burning American flags, burning his photo. If you're not really up to date with what's going on, you're gonna see those images, and if you're his base voters, that's gonna piss you off. Like, look at these fucking assholes. They hate America. They're just gonna kill us all and blah blah blah. And it plays into it. So again, this is where I do see him almost as an idiot savant genius. Like, he knows how to play to his base. He knows how to play the media. As much as everyone disagrees that he's the most covered person in the world, he was second place or Time Person of the Year, and he won it last year. So I mean, he's obviously doing something right where he maintains control of the message, even though no one likes the message. And I'm not quite sure how that's going to be changed, if he's ever going to lose that capacity, or if people are going to reach a point where they're just too fed up. In this specific situation, again, I felt a certain type of way about it initially. I'm not quite sure where I'm at now. I'm curious to see what happens and how it plays out. I mean, we can't do anything about it. And I think, and my friend Josh had mentioned this during the week, and he was right. It was almost unanimously passed
in '96
by Congress. So
signed by Bill Clinton.
So in that defense of Trump, he's not doing anything illegal. He's just
saying, I'm not going to waive it.
He's doing what the executive should do, which is, enforce law.
But to that respect, though, the waiver was supposed to be granted every 6 months. It was supposed to be signed off if the president, and every president before him has taken advice, thought that there was a danger to American lives, a danger to property, a danger of violence. There was a danger of violence. It's clear because there is violence. And that the State Department issues warnings to Americans in the Middle East saying, now you got to watch out. So they are acknowledging that they know violence is inevitable and that it could happen to Americans, and yet they didn't sign the he didn't sign the waiver, which was supposed to be there to not interrupt the peace process and not endanger Americans in the Middle East, which it did. And so while, yes, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and it's where all their stuff is, and it's where everybody goes when they visit Israel to visit the capital, it doesn't mean that he should have signed this waiver, because all it is, it's gamemanship. Okay. It's not something that had to be done. He did it for the optics. Yeah. He did it to enrage his base, to get a little support for himself, because he slumps in the polls, and he slumps when you've got all these accusations against him, and there's people that don't believe him. And half this country hates him, half the country isn't sure or adores him. And he knows that if he keeps everybody fighting and keeps everybody divided, he will win.
Right, and Jason pointed out, one of our listeners there, he says even the Templar in the 1200s knew this was a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It's true. I mean, you can't hold Jerusalem forever. I mean, even if the Pope says don't do it, then maybe don't do it. Because if anybody knows anything about Jerusalem, about going to war and trying to declare whose city that is, it would probably be the Pope.
Speaking of the Pope, how do you guys feel about cakes?
Cakes. Gay cakes?
Gay cakes?
Homosexual cakes?
A homosexual cake.
Infringing on the religious rights of...
let's fly halfway across the world and leave Jerusalem and come right back to Washington, D.C. Supreme Court, 8 seats plus 1 bandit. Sitting in for... he's sitting in for Merrick Garland.
He's keeping his seat warm for the next 4 decades.
Well, you know what? Honestly, if the Democrats retake control of the Senate, I don't care about the House at that point. If they retake control of the Senate, I would love for Merrick Garland to be the next appointee. But we're going to the case of Masterpiece.
Especially now that you can do it with 51 votes.
Yeah, got rid of that. Thank you.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if they know they were going to lose and in their...
Oh, you mean like what they did in Virginia or North Carolina when the outgoing governor got replaced by a Democrat?
And then he changed all the... Hey, but...
the court voted struck it down, but they still tried to do it.
Yeah, they tried to, on the way out, they just, no, we're going to set up all these protective barriers, so you can't do shit and switch and everything.
Took away all the appointment powers and whatnot. Just
pretty much castrating the new incoming governor. But no, thank God that the court struck it down. And
okay, but again, and the court struck these things down, but as we get into this Gorsuch era, you've got the court now for probably the next 40 years leaning a certain way.
Maybe you do need 60 votes for.
Yeah, I think that needs to be enshrined somewhere. Like, you shouldn't be able to vote that away. But
you shouldn't be able to vote anything just 51.
Our dear SCOTUS is now hearing a case out of Colorado that the appeals court there and the state courts all upheld that this was a discriminatory action taken by Masterpiece Bakers, by the baker.
Did you say Master P? Did he have a bakery? Masterpiece, okay.
Yeah, Masterpiece Baker. He has a bakery. He considers himself a cake artist. though he is not the cake boss.
He's
He
an artist.
considers himself a cake artist. And thus, when he denied a same-sex couple a cake, he denied to make them a cake. He was brought up. He was the couple actually went to the Colorado Civil Rights Commission and asked for them to not. I don't know if you could force anybody to do anything when it comes to something like creating something, but they wanted it to be known that this was a discriminatory thing, and he fought back, saying, first of all, it was his religious experience. Not like he put a sign on the front door saying we don't make gay cakes. They came in, walked through the door. They were not escorted in by security or anything like that. They walked up to the counter. They asked for the cake, and he said no. And then proceeded to say that he doesn't make cakes for gay weddings and such. And then when it became a legal issue, he got into legal arguments saying that it's his freedom of religious expression, that he's an artist and he can't be forced to do any of these things. And at first, I was adamantly 100% on the side of the couple. This baker is clearly being discriminating against same-sex couples, even though it's a legal practice. It is recognized as an equal right by the Supreme Court already. And there have been cases in the 60s where you had food restaurants, where the chef considered himself a master and an artist and refused to serve black people in their restaurant. We're not making food for them because it violates my deeply held beliefs. Well, a couple of friends after I mentioned it on Facebook and expressed my opinion on it, had come back and disagreed with me respectfully. My friend Rachel, my friend Nick, they both said that they thought that it was the baker's right to refuse to service. And I started thinking, like I said in the beginning of the show, I've always considered myself a more reasonable person. I like to take every side, and maybe my opinion will change a little. And it did. I started looking at it from the baker's point of view, that he's just making some wedding cakes, and he's got this idea that weddings are between a man and a woman, and so he's going to provide services for them. And there is a limited right to refuse service to certain people. But when you are in a business, in a place of public accommodation, when you're not working for just private things and you're soliciting heterosexual weddings, you're just saying, I sell wedding cakes, and you refuse to service this one specific couple while not ever making it a point that you don't do it, while not ever saying, I'm really sorry about it, you're deliberately being a bigot against these people, then there is a problem. Then there's a legal issue right there. One quote that I'd like to mention, or rather read, was by a man named Stephen Cantor from the Buffalo Grove. He submitted an opinion piece, I suppose, the Chicago Tribune, and I believe it was actually today. And he had put in the bottom here, because he had disagreed with how the Tribune had announced it, and said, refusing to make a cake with certain messages or decorations is an expression of free speech. That is. And I agree with him. However, having established a willingness to create and sell a certain style of cake, i.e. wedding cakes, it is illegal illegal discrimination to decide who may or may not be eligible to purchase it. In my opinion, the Tribune had missed this critical distinction. So he was responding to the fact that they weren't really looking at it from all these sides. When you talk about this, the hearings were on Tuesday. Justice Elena Kagan said, well, how do we start going into things like makeup artists, hairdressers, florists, photographers? All these people are considered artists, makeup artists, right there. It's in the name. When do you draw the line and say that these people are allowed to discriminate just because they have a deeply held religious belief? In my opinion, what about actors? I was an actor for a little bit. I did stage. What if there are shows on Broadway and the director or the producer just happens to be an evangelical, and despite the content of the show, they decide we don't want homosexuals watching the show? I have free expression. I'm an artist. I can't be forced to perform for these people, and if you make me, I'm just going to turn the show off. Can they do that? Can you have people that are devoutly religious say, we're not going to serve Muslims or Jews because thou shalt not put any other God before me? That's a commandment. You're not allowed to do that. You can't idol worship. Can we deny pagans? Can I deny a Wiccan or Wiccan? I don't know how it's pronounced. But if you open this can of worms, and while maybe this one instance where the baker, he wasn't the only baker in town, they could have gone to someone else. It's not like he was the only person and he was discriminating against them and therefore they could never get a wedding cake. He was being discriminatory in a place of public accommodation. He sells wedding cakes. Weddings are legal through same-sex couples. He should have sold them the cake. Just give him something off the shelf. If anything, you didn't have to make a big deal about it, but now it's in the Supreme Court, and they're arguing that. You have the Employment Division versus Smith. It says that a neutral law generally applicable does not violate free expression or exercise thereof, as a clause in the Constitution, even if it infringes on an individual's religious beliefs. While you have another case, the Church of Lukumi Babalu versus the City of Halea, where it says the law is not neutral if its object is to infringe upon or restrict practices because of religious motivation. So it's looking like the court will sidestep the whole issue of expression, of freedom of speech and religion, and just go on, did the commission, the Colorado Commission, act aggressively against Mr. Phillips' religious beliefs in not paying attention to his actual argument? And if they had ignored the argument, then of course the court would have to go through all this stuff here. But I mean, I'm sure you both have strong opinions on either side. I still follow my belief that the couple was discriminated against and that was wrong, and that if you do, while I do support the baker and his right to provide a service and provide his art, I do not believe that you can discriminate against him. I don't believe that museums can start saying, well, Da Vinci was a Christian, or whatever the artist was a Christian, and therefore we're not going to let homosexuals view, the Mona Lisa or something like that. You open up a massive can of terrifying worms when you start letting that kind of stuff happen. When
I have a quick. I don't really have much to say on this, so if I can just get it out. I simply believe that it is discrimination. I get the whole artist and the freedom of expression and everything, but when you open up shop in a community and open up your doors for profit and you're making something, you shouldn't be able to discriminate because of a person's sexual orientation, their skin color, their religious beliefs, nothing. If this guy was doing something in private or whatever the case may be, that might be different. But this is in a public space, an open business that's open to anyone, and this is the United States. These gay men's rights are protected under the under law, and under the Supreme Court. It's already been done, and I don't think this infringes on his religious beliefs. I think that is a dumb argument. It's a ridiculous argument, because how is him just selling a cake to these gay men, saying that he's taking part in this, that he's actively encouraging this?
Yeah, it's not like he was checking his supply to people who sold him flour and sugar and eggs and making sure they weren't homosexuals.
Exactly. So where do you draw that line? It's a slippery slope, and I think it's not fair. It's not right, and it's ridiculous to me. It doesn't make any sense, and that's where I stand. These guys are definitely discriminated against. This guy should be made to sell his cake, and if he doesn't want to make cake for gay people, then close up your shop, make cakes at home in your own private time, and then sell it as art. But when you're selling it as a business, then you have to sell it to them as well.
Okay.
That's my view on it.
So,
God forbid a evangelical buys Duncan Hines or something, or Betty Crocker.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What exactly, because we got into the weeds a little bit, what exactly is the argument for him not selling the cake?
His argument, Jack Phillips' argument, is that he says, oh, I won't make a divorce cake. Not that there's ever been such a thing as a divorce cake, but he's like, my religious beliefs find that marriage is between a man and a woman, and therefore it is against my religious beliefs to make a cake for a homosexual couple, because this is my art, it would then suggest that I support this, which I don't. And so that's the argument.
But what's because you said you had some friends that had tried to open your mind to another way of looking at. What is their argument? What is their legal argument?
They
logical argument.
Legal arguments. Their arguments were simply that. So one of my friends is an artist, and she says she won't make things that she considers offensive, or she won't paint pictures or do any kind of art that she thinks
art should be offensive.
is inappropriate. She's not going to draw a picture of a grown man touching a little girl or something like that. So basically, you can't take a picture of Roy Moore at a mall. But she will not make stuff like that, and that is well within her right to not make art or things like that she considers offensive or wrong, despite the fact that she offers her services. But the thing is, she didn't set up a shop saying, X person's photos, we do photos for you, or we paint pictures for you, or we do tattoos for you, and then start denying people things. This is a place of public. The law is against places of public accommodation discriminating. If you want to go back to the to the Supreme Court saying that Hobby Lobby case and things like that, where a deeply held religious conviction in someone owning a business, they can decide not to provide birth control because they think that it's abortion and that's murder. and that is fine. They were allowed to not have to pay for those kind of birth controls because the people could get it themselves, and they didn't, and they got an exemption and a waiver to the ACA's requirement. But this is a different case because this person is selling cakes for weddings, and weddings are marriage. It's marriage between whoever is legally able to be recognized as a marriage. And the other person, who I spoke to, I'd be really embarrassed and upset if I was wrong about this. But I believe he's gay, and he made the claim that even though he is, that he still believes that the baker had a right to decide who gets his cakes and who doesn't.
Now, let me ask you, this is the reason I asked that question. So, what if it was an interracial couple, right? And they didn't like that. Mm-hmm. Would people still argue on the same side?
Yeah, and that, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know if there's a religious doctrine in Christianity that disallows for that. If there is, then maybe in theory he could argue that. But, but if his argument is religious doctrine,
he's using two arguments, and because the First Amendment encompasses 5 things, 2 of which are freedom of expression, and separated by a comma, is freedom of religion. So he's arguing both of them. He's arguing that it's his freedom of expression and his freedom of religion. So in the case of an interracial couple, he would probably just be able to rely on his freedom of expression. He has a deeply held conviction that it's wrong and therefore should not be forced to do it. And I don't think you can force anybody to do anything save for at the point, at the end of a gun. When you put a gun to their head and say, do this or die, and some people still will choose to die. There's no way to force this baker to bake a cake for these people because he'll probably lace it with laxatives or something. But you can tell him you cannot discriminate against people, or else you will be fined. You will have your business license revoked. You will not be able to conduct business in a state or in this country because the law says you cannot discriminate. And if you're going to violate the law, then you don't get to have a legitimate business. Do what Jay just said here. Go to your home, make cakes, and say, any heterosexual couples need a wedding cake, I got you.
By the way, I just want to point another thing out that is a little ironic that a guy who has chosen a profession of making pretty colored cakes that holds a belief that he cannot make a cake for a same-sex couple.
Well,
a little funny to me.
Voltaire said that those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And while this might not be an atrocity, it absolutely can lead to atrocity.
Can we tag that onto Trump?
Yeah, and the things actually, that he said and done, he makes people believe that these certain things are true. And just like we said in past episodes, he'll say something, someone will correct him or respond to it, but his supporters will not pay attention to the response. They don't care because they just want to hear what makes them angry. They want to hear what gets their blood pumping, what makes them excited to be alive, what distracts them from all the horrible and terrible things that are happening all around them, the people dying, people starving, Americans dying and starving, all over the world. And they are distracted because, Donald Trump touched a pussy.
See, I feel this is a good segue into...
Which I'm also sorry about Mike Pence's cat dying. No animal should have to suffer like that.
Suffer what, death or being Mike Pence's cat?
I don't know, it was 16 years old. So R.I.P. Pickles.
So I think this is a good segue into this tweet that was making the rounds on social media this week about, and I think someone last week on the show had commented or asked a question, I think it might have been Dan Valenti, about how is it that Trump and the GOP get people to vote against their own interests. And I think this guy really nailed it on the head, so I'm going to read it real quick, and then we could discuss it, and it'll lead into, I guess, the debt ceiling. But, I don't want to take too much time, but I think it's a very interesting thought. So it was by a tweet by a guy named Juan Pa, and, quote, "So I am a Mexican-American from a poor, rural, mostly white town in Oklahoma. Missing from this debate, how poor whites see themselves." Now it's not clicking. "They don't see themselves as poor. They don't base their identity on it. They see themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires. The stigma against poverty is incredibly strong. It is shameful to be poor, to not have the comfort of the middle class. So they pretend that they aren't poor. They are willing to lie to make it seem like they aren't poor. They purchase things to make it seem like they're not.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
In my town, wealth wasn't associated with greed, but with hard work and inherent goodness. You are blessed if you have material wealth. When they see Trump, they don't see an extortionist who is rich because of the very conditions that keep their own communities in poverty. They see someone who worked hard and was justly rewarded with wealth. Most men especially think that they too could be Trump if it not for the unfair obstacles put in their way. white men who don't consider themselves successful enough to have so many excuses for their quote-unquote failures. The idea that immigrants are the reason they are poor and not wealthy like Trump is very appealing. It takes all the shame and the blame away. And here we have a man who they think, quote-unquote, tells it like it is, and is willing to name the thing stealing prosperity out of their hands. If these people saw themselves as an exploited class of people, if American culture didn't stigmatize poverty so much, it might be different. But America has so entangled wealth with goodness and poverty with moral deficiency that they can't build that identity. They won't. Trump is rich, and so according to American criteria, he is also wise, fair, moral, deserving, strong, clever, simply because he has to be. Capitalism and the American dream teach that poverty is a temporary state that can be transcended with hard work and cleverness. To fail to transcend poverty and to admit you are poor is to admit you are neither hardworking or clever. It's cultural brainwashing. So if an exploited class of people don't want to admit they're exploited and they blame themselves for their oppression, what manifests? Xenophobia, hatred of anyone who is different, queer, people of color. These people are eroding the goodness of America. And if they would just stop ruining America, then the perfect design of America could work and deliver on the prosperity that they were promised. I'm telling you as someone who has spent almost their entire life in this environment that if you think cities are a bubble, good God. How you balance those realities and what conclusions you reach to improve the lives of both, well, I'm not smart enough to answer that. Still, we need to understand the identity working class white people have built for themselves, one diametrically opposed to, well, reality.
That it's so eloquent and so well written and well recited. I can't argue any of that. I wish I had written it myself.
Yeah.
And I guess just to tie up the rest of this topic, I mean, if you think that making a cake for a gay couple is supporting gay marriage, then voting for a pedophile is supporting pedophilia.
Yep.
So just remember that, Republican voters.
Oh, that was a good one.
Whatnot.
Yeah, it was.
It would be a long hashtag, but I feel like we can get it going.
Yeah, we should hashtag the shared videos with that.
Yeah. So let's
again,
get out of there.
Yeah, and just to
on
touch
a somber note.
Yeah, and to touch briefly on what we just read, I think that aside from it being like you just said, eloquent and correct, it's true. I think in this country we
I've
worried
even felt
too
that
much.
myself.
Yeah. We talked about it briefly before the show today. That I think a lot of the divisions in this country, they're around race and religion. But ultimately, I think it should be about class, because working whites, working blacks, working Hispanics, they're going through the same situation. And I think that our culture does put too much weight in success only being material possessions and what you can show. It's like showing off. Like, do you have a Beamer? Do you have a
keeping
car?
up with the Joneses.
And then, yeah,
Gordon Gekko.
Yeah, and then
Greed is good.
yeah. So I mean, like, where do can you be successful without being rich? And if the answer is no, then all these people are struggling. You're being promised that the American dream is work hard and you will have a great, successful life, and at least have a life where you can be okay. And middle class Americans are seeing that now. They're working 2-3 jobs to make ends meet, and they're not living this reality. And I don't blame them for being angry. When you're being told your whole life that as an American, your inherent right is to, if you just work hard, you get an education, you keep your head down, you do things right, you will be successful. And then you're 30 years old, married with 2 kids, and you're still struggling, then what the fuck? Like, where's my promise?
That sounded a little personal there.
No, it did.
30 and 2 kids.
I know.
That
Who
in
is
this
that?
room?
Who is that guy?
Jeez,
but
Louise.
no.
Tell him why you really mad.
but no. And to that point, I do empathize and sympathize with these people. I don't go out and blame minorities and immigrants, maybe because I've come from a family of immigrants. I myself am a minority. But I do catch myself sometimes trying to blame someone else. And I just like his articulation of the subject. And I truly do, sometimes I feel that in the way things are being said and the arguments being made, that we pigeonhole people, races, communities into one thing. And maybe it's not. I mean, these people are suffering as well. And they just see a different answer than we do.
That's the power of Trump, though, right? Like,
yeah.
So
yeah.
Well,
the cynical answer is, obviously you divide and conquer. Give people an enemy. My dad always used to say to me, you want to cure racism, you got to have some aliens come down, because that'll just give us all as humanity.
band
Kind of
together.
coalesce together. Shit, we're all humans.
Like hate binds way more than love.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
Fear is a great motivator.
But speaking of
It's a piggyback, yeah.
rich people and
The tax bill, right?
getting ready to be rich, how you like that debt ceiling?
Okay, so debt ceiling's got to be raised. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
It's been, throughout Obama's presidency, Republicans threatened and succeeded in shutting down the government a couple of times because they were the minority and they didn't get what they wanted. So they bitched.
Petulant children.
And so now Democrats are saying that, they will withhold their votes for the debt ceiling because it is required to have 60 votes to, for these spending bills like that, because they can't use little, parliamentary tricks to get the 51 vote thing. They need the 60.
Unless they change the law.
I don't know if they even can on that one. I have to look into it. But, they're saying that if there's not a DACA-esque, concession from Republicans, that they will not vote for. So Trump says, well, Democrats want America to be unsafe. They want immigrants to pour into this country, which they're not. They're actually less likely to come here these days. But they're saying that the Democrats don't care about that. They want they want strict gun laws. They want to kill everybody that's not like that. I don't know. It's ridiculous, the kind of things that he's saying when we've got tweeted evidence that he didn't believe that when Obama was president. But, when it comes to the tax bill, when it comes to the debt ceiling, and now they're in reconciliation, just a couple more things since we've been talking about taxes for the past 3 episodes. Here's a few more things that prove that the Republicans really care about you. Tax write-offs for private tuition, yay. Tax write-offs for going to public school, which you're forced to do unless you can afford to go to private school, no.
Nay.
Graduate school, if you're getting paid to go to school and you're getting a stipend and they're paying for your tuition, that's income. Even though you don't have a job, you have to pay taxes on that. Businesses, got a private jet, write it off. Got to buy pencils, not a write-off. Got to pay for paper, employees, got to pay for health breaks, break rooms, water, not a write-off. Want to make a political contribution? Unlimited write-off. You can support whoever you choose in the GOP.
Get him, Joe.
You cannot write off medical expenses, education expenses, supplies. You cannot write off your house burning down in a wildfire, your house falling into a hole from an earthquake, your house being waterlogged from a flood, from a blizzard. But you can if you were in a hurricane. You know where hurricanes hit, George?
Florida, Texas. Louisiana.
Giant Republican strongholds. We've talked about this before. This tax bill is weaponry. It is a weaponized tax bill deliberately. I mean, anybody that denies this, I barely want to have a conversation with, because it is a deliberate attack on everybody that stood against or tried to resist the Trump administration or the Republican agenda. And most of it is hand scribbled in. I wouldn't be surprised if they still have some things that someone snuck in on the side and
like the fine print is not even in print.
It's not. It's in cursive.
It's in cursive.
And they've spent people in education have spent so long trying to tell you we need to pay attention to cursive, and Republicans are like, no, don't pay attention to cursive. These
so that was the long con. You bring in smartphones and computers, teach people how to type, so that one day you do a tax bill that no one can read, and you give all the tax.
Exactly.
It's genius.
It doesn't matter that you can't read it. It was 470 pages long.
I mean, no one read it anyway.
You can't
it's
read
not.
it if you got a chance.
They got the Bloom brothers working on the long con right there.
Oh man.
So you have this tax bill now that is completely weaponized. That it overwhelmingly favors corporations and the already wealthy, who have gotten wealthy, who do not need the help, who are not suffering, even though they say they are. And it even has now provisions that say things like natural disasters, which California is on fire right now. It's snowing in Texas.
Robert Murdoch's house.
The world is over.
There was an earthquake in Northern Virginia that affected parts of South Jersey. I mean, people were hearing sonic booms a couple months ago, and they didn't know where that was coming from. All these places that are predominantly, or at least considered to be blue places, are put under this guillotine that is just slowly getting closer and closer to our necks, and we're just leaving our heads there. We're just saying, okay, well, I don't like this. You don't do it. Don't do it. And it's just, they're just saying, we're going to do it. And they did it.
Yep.
And now it's just going to keep happening. We're going to let this kind of stuff keep going until Democrats in general decide they're not going to take this crap anymore, and they decide to actually get out and start voting. Say, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to vote for the yellow party, or, I'm going to be a libertarian and not care about anything.
There's so many people that think like that I have this discussion with on Facebook, and I'm so upset they're not watching. I wish one person in particular was. Like,
oh, no.
Not voting does not fucking help. It is not a form of rebellion. You're actually giving up a right that so many people in this world don't have, and that would value And it's really sad at the amount of voter apathy in this country, because that in itself is a reason why we could argue that Trump became president. Not even half of the nation voted in 2016, and then that half that did vote was equally split in half of to who, was going to be president. So, I mean, that in itself is ridiculous.
That apathy translates into the president and his appointments.
Yeah.
And you got the FCC, the Labor Department, the Education Department, the State Department, all these people with these corporate billionaire types that have never served the public, that have never been in public institutions, that have never done anything for the people, now making all these decisions and clearly making decisions that do not help anybody. You got the FCC with the net neutrality rules, and you've got millions, or maybe not millions, but hundreds of thousands, dozens of thousands of comments saying we do not want this to take place, do not have this vote, and Ajit Pai is still going through with it.
Yeah, he's refusing to show documentation
and now you've got the Labor Department passing things like the server tip rule, saying that if an employer wants to withhold your tips, as long as you're making the minimum wage, they can take your tips and redistribute, a word that almost got Barack Obama
That is
assassinated.
A socialist word.
That
Right? That's like why you don't vote for Bernie.
Their tips to the rest of the staff, or just keep them. The employer could just keep them if they want to under the new Labor Department rules. They don't mind when it's redistribution among the lower classes, but if you talk for a second about taking a penny from someone with trillions of pennies, they will come at you as if you're trying to murder them.
I was exactly going to say that. For the GOP, redistribution of wealth is fucking okay, as long as it's not the rich people redistributing their wealth to the poor. And for anyone that works in the service industry, I'm sorry if I'm being too mean about this. If you fucking voted for Trump, if you support Trump, and this ends up hitting your pockets, you reap what you sow, man. Because you should have known better.
But you understand.
That's just my opinion.
You understand that the way this phases in, it's not. Here's the thing, and I'm going to tell you exactly how this will play out, and then we should move on.
Yeah.
This tax bill is going to pass, and by the time people, the working class, actually feel the effects of it, I think they've calculated that likely a Democrat will be in office, and fuck the facts. They'll just say that it's the Democrats' fault, and people will believe it because that's what they want to believe, and that's how it'll play out. And the Democrats will be stuck paying for this,
Yeah.
right? And when the deficit explodes, they'll say, "Look, a Democrat's in office. The deficit exploded. We care about the debt again." And then they'll use that and ride that wave to come into office again. And when they're in office again, they'll either keep the taxes the same or give more tax cuts.
Yeah,
and that's the way these things play themselves out.
I was having this argument about the economy with some friends, and they threw that line out there that, oh, look at the growth, look at the unemployment rate, and look at everything.
Didn't care about any of that for the last 7 years.
Exactly, and all of that is because of Obama era policies.
And we're on the same upward trajectory.
All the protections he put in place, all the finance
they're all
reform.
being taken away, chipped at, and then we don't know what the repercussions are going to be.
Republicans have done that, we've gone to recession.
And then Democrats have to come back in and save it, but they're never getting the credit. They're never given the credit due for doing that. But
hang on, Joe. You ever hear the phrase "Don't ruin a good story with facts"?
It's true, though.
That's how the GOP's living these days.
Just like the Prime Minister of Canada, it's Trudeau.
It's true.
There
you go.
Last little tidbit on the tax bill, too. There is also tax breaks for companies that are moving towards automation. When you replace a worker with a machine, you get a tax break, but you don't get a tax break for hiring a human being. GE's cutting 18% of its workforce. Thanks, Trump, for keeping jobs in America. This is
exact. Oh, and did you hear that? I forget who, GM or
GE.
No, GM, someone else. They're not building the cars that they promised here in Detroit. They're actually now building them in Mexico. After Trump made a whole thing of I worked out a deal. They're going to be building cars in the U.S.
They're going to build some air conditioners.
They're all leaving. They're leaving, and again, we're going to see this play out in a few years.
You mean Trump said something that he didn't follow through on?
Oh, yeah, I know.
Are you saying that he doesn't have conflicts of interest because he showed a bunch of fucking folders about how there's a separation between his business and the White House?
And the folders were blank.
All those murdered trees.
Or the fact that he's making money out of all his resort stays in Mar-a-Lago from tax
$30 million on golf cart
Or the fact that he's still making things in China or in India or wherever, but he's talking about America First policy and bringing work back over here, but yet he's still making money overseas. Oh, no, I'm not talking about any of that. No.
Speaking of assholes named Trump.
Don Jr.
So... apparently this week, our boy Don.
The Don.
Yeah.
Dingaling.
He got himself into a bit of, I don't know if trouble, but he did have to speak with the Senate committee. And apparently, when asked about his communications with his father in regards to the Russia communication, he says that he couldn't answer because of attorney-client privileges, because there happened to be some lawyer somewhere in the building.
But he didn't know who was in the building.
Didn't know who was there.
We don't know who was there.
Can't talk about it. And we kind of just let that slide. And then it's not done there. Apparently, remember when he went on TV saying there were no more communications with the Russians in regards to this meeting? Yeah, there were follow-up emails.
Mm-hmm. And
but the plot
WikiLeaks even told him not to contest the election if they lost.
And WikiLeaks gave him, and we're still waiting on the confirmation that he replied to this email, but he was emailed, which, again, he did not... he released the emails that he wanted to release, but now we're finding out more that they sent him an email with a key to unlock the stolen Hillary Clinton emails.
Which, that is a crime. That is considered conspiracy. Because there's no such crime as collusion.
Even if you didn't act on it, he didn't report it.
Exactly.
So,
there's no such crime as collusion, but there is crime in conspiracy and using stolen materials to do that. Now, I've heard some people, legal analysts on things like CNN and NPR and all that stuff, saying that, well, reporters sometimes take information illegally obtained and using their First Amendment rights to free press and free speech, disseminate that to the public. But these were things that were deliberately hacked out of DNC servers, given to the Republicans. I mean, whether it was Russians working with WikiLeaks or not, they didn't know
there's
specifically.
There's correlation to Watergate.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, Nixon kind of went down that road,
but
right?
there was no real evidence to show that they knew Donald Trump was going to be the Republican candidate. They just knew they didn't want a Democrat. They didn't want another Barack Obama. You can see how WikiLeaks would be on board with that because Barack Obama, as president, supported the claims that Julian Assange had committed rape in Sweden and wanted to have him extradited or charged in the U.S. for other crimes. So you can see how he'd want to get back at them. And anybody that's against them, it's, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, of course, when Donald Trump gets a nomination, they try to get in touch with them. Julian Assange is looking for appointments to being an ambassador or something like that, I believe, was in some of those emails, the Don Jr. ones that he released. And if he had gotten that, he would have had certain diplomatic immunities and would have been able to freely walk about and couldn't have been charged with certain things. I just think that it's absolutely ridiculous that all this information is there. Everything is right there, and they will not act on it because it would make them look bad. And when I say them, I mean the GOP. I mean the ones that are right now are in charge. And I wish, when something you had said before, I wish I had said this during the last episode. And when we're talking about things like the taxes and stuff like that, and about the Trumps and the Kushners of the world, they pass these kind of tax bills knowing it will add to the deficit, and they know that it will hurt people. And so they can use this as a prop later on for why, like you said, why they will be able to blame Democrats, but also they will say, okay, well, we have all this debt and stuff like that. We need to cut things. We need to cut Social Security, Medicare. We need to cut education, but we're going to give $700 billion more to the Pentagon because we need it. These are things that the Kushners and the Trumps and the supporters of his in the world, they just will not ever really consider the impact it has on you. It's the frog in the boiling water. You don't care until it's too late. I mean, we're seeing the world burning and freezing at the same time, and they're still like, nope, it's because America legalized gay marriage. It was that. Or, this happens all the time to the earth. We can't do anything about it.
First of all,
but is this going to lead to anything though? More than anything, because look, we now is been 3 or 4 episodes where we talk about Flynn, talk about Don Jr., we talk about Papadopoulos, whatever, and
that's
then
a fun name.
It seems that we're getting closer. I do think, and we've said it before, there is an end game in mind. I think for Mueller, but I feel that sometimes everything's a little too premature in the way that some people celebrate or think that the other shoe's going to drop for Trump. You called him Teflon Don last week, and I think that's an accurate description of Donald Trump. No matter what you throw at him, it doesn't really stick. And I don't think he's above letting his family members take the fall. I'm pretty sure he's not an asshole to a point where he would want his son or daughter to actually take the fall.
He doesn't care about his son. Ivanka is well protected.
But if it was positioned that way, he may or may not let it happen. And
maybe this is all happening because he wants Kushner out of the picture.
Maybe. I mean,
Melania is a prisoner of war, so he doesn't care about her.
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting that what's going on. I think it merits being brought up and conversed upon, but
moving on.
Yeah, I don't know. Unless you want to add something to it, Steve, I don't know if there's really an...
Oh, no, I did have a very nuanced point.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
About Donnie?
Yeah.
Go for it, man.
Donald Trump Jr. is a fucking asshole.
Okay.
That's it.
And there you go.
That's all.
And
That's all.
all right.
Segue.
Into that, we're going to briefly talk about, now we're coming up to the tail end of the show, we're going to talk about Daniel Shaver. And for anyone who doesn't know about it, I really didn't know about it till this week when it made the news.
Thank God for social media in some respects.
Right, yeah, because, people wouldn't be angered about this. Well, he's a 26-year-old man from Texas who was murdered, and I am saying the word murdered, by a police officer, Philip Braceford, in Mesa. I believe that's Mesa, Arizona. He
It's a
was
very pro-gun state, by the way.
Yeah, which makes us even that much more whatever. He's a father of 2. He was married, young guy. He's a pest control. That was his job, pest control, and he was showing off to 2 of his friends in a hotel room a pellet gun that he uses to kill birds. In the line of his job, in the line of duty. And at one point or another, he pointed it out the window for a second. A passerby saw a rifle being pointed out the window and called the cops. Of course, the cops show up with AR-15 rifles, Kevlar vests, like they're about to bust in Osama bin Laden's bunker. They give him, if you see the video, I know some people don't like to. I know, Steve, you said you can't watch videos like that. It was hard to watch. It was tragic. It got my blood boiling. To watch
I swelled up a little bit.
Dude, they were giving him commands that were just almost like, he had to crawl to them with his feet crossed. He said, if you fall on your face, you better fall on your face, because if your hands go anywhere, you're going to die. Like, listen to me. I'm not here to parley with you, whatever. If you don't listen to me, you will die. Like, how is that the way that we police now in the United States?
How do police have the authority to decide that?
Exactly, in 2017. This guy was unarmed, not doing anything wrong, a father of 2, and then when he was shot 5 fucking times, and I think all 5 bullets hit him, and he died.
Wait, let me stop you. This sounds familiar.
Oh, like it happens a lot within the black community type?
Oh, okay.
Oh, that, yeah. Okay. So look, I don't want to make it a black and white thing, and we did talk about this early in the show.
It's funny that this picture is like in black and white.
Right?
Well, he was a white person.
No, he was a white person.
At
Yeah,
least
he was
on video
no,
view.
He was white. The officer was white.
It is noted too that the side of the officer's gun said "you're fucked" on it.
Yeah.
He has engraved onto the side of his gun. This
trigger
happy.
Very astute.
Is that like? Was that a joke or is
No,
that
that's
like
no,
real?
it's on it.
Very
It's
serious.
real.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
no, because cops now think that they're like
They think they're superhero.
Everybody.
And you know what? No. I'm gonna retrace that because I'm just being angry and talking.
Exactly. This cop, this officer.
Cop. I respect police officers. I respect what it stands to protect and serve your community. Does that always happen? No. Are there very
the
good
injustice
officers?
is that he was acquitted of all of these things.
Exactly.
He got no punishment whatsoever. Wasn't even suspended. I
No.
mean, a police dog bites someone and the guy was suspended for a week.
He was cleared on all charges. And what I think is important to bring up in this is the state of how acceptable this has become in our country. And I brought it up in episode 1. We briefly talked about it, Steve, a little bit before the show. I had said at one point when we talked about police brutality a few weeks ago that this has to happen within the white community for white people to feel that they need to step in and take action. And unfortunately, this is an example here, and it got a lot of people angry. It's easier to empathize with someone that looks the way you look and to put a face that you can relate to this tragedy. And it is a tragedy. I think it's murder. And I think it's ridiculous that in 2017, in the United States of America, this guy was.
Yeah, this wasn't Vietnam. This wasn't Eastern Europe or North Korea.
Like, it was like you can't.
This was in Arizona, a state where you were allowed to have a gun if you want to.
And he was just showing off his pellet gun. Like, dude, that cost.
They didn't ask any questions.
Like,
they didn't interrogate.
No.
They gave him no due process. He was summarily executed. Crawling on the floor to heavily armed multiple officers that were protected with Kevlar.
Yeah, wouldn't you be scared? I'd be shitting.
The man was crying.
Bricks,
I mean, the man was crying.
Yeah. He's telling him, if you make a mistake, you will die. Like, you're being told
these
you're going to die
officers'
tonight.
lives were in no way, shape, or form threatened, and they violated the 8th Amendment. They violated the 8th Amendment. This was cruel and unusual punishment that was carried out without due process. It's a violation of the 5th Amendment rights and the 8th Amendment. How this officer got away is obviously completely political.
Because in this country,
they protected themselves.
Yeah, juries and judges don't like to go after cops in the line of duty because if you fear for your life, then it's enough reason for you to do this. And I'm not calling all police cowards. I'm calling this guy a coward. Unless this guy on the floor was Jason fucking Bourne, him reaching his hand behind his waist like that, you were not in immediate danger.
To likely pull up his pants, as you mentioned.
And let's say maybe he had a handgun there and he popped off a shot. You got another
I didn't see
guy
any reports that said they
there.
found a gun on him.
They didn't find a gun. He was unarmed. And again, we could go in circles about this. I just think it had to be brought up. We deserve to give it some time.
And he deserves to.
And he deserves to be
even
remembered.
If only 10 people watch this, I mean, he deserves.
No, it's very, very, very sad. And I think it's going to keep happening, and I don't know what the tipping point is going to be when people finally look at this and be like, something needs to change, because these people are giving carte blanche to just murder. And I'm using that word. I know it's a heavy word, it's provocative, but I feel that this guy was murdered. Look at that picture, man. Like, those two beautiful little kids, who are they going to grow up with without a dad?
And on
like,
top of that, they're going to grow up
empathize.
thinking a police officer murdered my dad.
Yeah, I empathize, because, like, dude, I have two kids. What if I make the mistake of getting drunk one night in a hotel and I'm showing off a fake gun, and then that costs me my life in the fucking United States? Like, how free are we if this is what's going on? But, I mean, that's my 2 cents on it. I don't know if you guys want to add anything. But
I don't know what
I said what I wanted to say.
I don't know what I could add that I haven't been saying for maybe since I've had a voice to speak about anything.
Yeah.
Again, this is nothing new. And I'm not sort of saying this about you guys, but I do hear this talked about as though it's a new thing, whereas this is not news.
It just happens to be the most recent.
This man has a family, but so did everyone else that this has happened to. Do you know what I mean? And I don't want to take away from his moment, because this is a tragedy, but this is where we are. And
but at least
maybe
in
maybe
those
it
moments,
does
people
take...
rioted in the streets. In those things you're talking about, you don't have to take the camera off you, because I mean, honestly, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this, but. There was a reaction in the black community when these things happened to them. They band together. They all said this is wrong, and they tried to do something. Whether they got anywhere or not, they still tried to do something. This man, obviously a Caucasian in some way, maybe he was something else, and I don't know. I don't want to be disrespectful, but where are people outraged? Where are the protests and the riots? Where are the Arizona gun rights advocates saying that he shouldn't have been shot for waving a gun around?
Because it doesn't happen
It
enough.
doesn't fit into a narrative.
Exactly. And until it does fit the narrative, and unfortunately that must mean that more things like this will and have to happen, I guess.
Yeah,
they're going to have to shoot a Girl Scout, basically.
Oh, shit.
No,
I mean, that's as far as it's going to have to be taken to such an extreme that people, your heart will have to fall out of your chest.
Because look at the Sandy Hook shooting. Like no one's gonna do anything. They're gonna talk about this for 10 minutes.
You know what? You're
and
right.
then it will move on. Whether it's a church getting shot up, the place that you would think people would universally think, hey, this is off limits. No, we'll shoot that up. That doesn't stop you. We'll shoot up a high school.
Yeah.
You don't like high school kids? I don't either. They're assholes.
Yeah.
We'll shoot up an elementary school. Fuck that too. No one is going to care because people are on the side of this argument that they're on. And the reason that people will always be, or certain people will be on the side of the police, is because, in my opinion, the police as a whole, and I'm not speaking about individuals, but the institution of the police are to protect the systems that we have in place. They are to protect the wealth or infrastructure that we have, and that system is in certain ways geared towards keeping things the same. And if you are not getting the high end of that stick, then the system is designed to keep it that way, and they preserve that right. And so they are the King's Guard, and they will always be treated as such. So I don't know where this changes.
Just to follow, towards the tie-up of the topic, because obviously we all agreed we didn't want to harp on it too much, but I mean, watching the video after he shoots him while he's basically begging on the floor to not be shot, they walk right past his body. They don't check him. Maybe the officers behind him checked.
They don't call EMT right away, which they should.
Maybe the officers behind him checked him. I don't know. But all I saw were two officers walking up to a door and could not figure out how to open up this door.
Because they got the wrong fucking door. Yeah. Because they got the wrong door. So the next one. So they couldn't even have their facts straight, but killed the man without having all the facts. And again, if we sound angry, it's because we are. Because again, within the minority community,
there's genuine anger.
Within the minority community, more especially within the black community, this happens way too fucking often. And I
certainly hope there's a civil casing. I hope they sue the crap out of that guy and the police department as a whole for allowing that kind of a culture to manifest.
But it's not. And then just me personally, I do want to again reiterate that this isn't a reflection of all cops. I married into a family of cops. My father-in-law was a cop. My wife's uncle was a cop. Yeah, and for all intents and purposes, these are very good men that I look up to that did their job right. Exactly. And there are many cops out there that do their job right. But
vast majority.
But that should not negate the fact that when a cop does something wrong, we can't call him out because then we're calling out every cop. And I feel that that's the way people view it now. If I say, "Hey, that cop fucked up. He's a bad cop," that correlates into me saying all cops are bad, all cops fucked up, all cops are shit. That's not what it means. I'm just calling that guy out. If a lawyer fucks up, I'm calling out that one lawyer, not the whole not
If
the
a
whole
terrorist
law
happens to be a Muslim, I'm calling out that
Yeah.
one person. I'm not
not
saying all Muslims.
but then that's what we tend to do. We tend to overgeneralize. So again, I respect the cops doing their job out there day in and day out. They do it right because it is a dangerous job. It is not easy, and the dangers are profound. But with that comes some certain amount, not even a certain amount of a fucking lot of responsibility to do your job right, and to at the end of the day remember that you're serving and protecting your community, not yourself. If you're a coward, if you're scared of being shot or seeing a gun in real life, then don't become a cop. Don't do it. That's why that's why other people aren't cops. If you can't hack it, don't do it.
All right,
And
well,
with that, we should wrap up, I guess, and
let's
get
do
into
something.
Yeah,
Disney.
honorable mentions.
Honorable
time.
mentions. So you want-
Okay,
Honorable mentions.
so
Disney.
yeah. So
Take it away, Steve.
everybody is. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but apparently, Disney is in talks to purchase most of the assets, the TV and movie assets of Fox, and Fox does hold the rights to the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. And as a comic book fan, I would love to see Avengers versus the X-Men,
Or a good
bring them
Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah, good Fantastic Four movie. Bring in Reed Richards and the first family of comic books, and that would be great. And I started thinking about this, and I felt weird initially because it was sort of like, okay, I am rooting for a corporate overlord to get even larger, and that sort of felt weird. So following that feeling, I started, let me think about this a little more, and then you start to think, okay, let's look at what this deal is. Disney wants to purchase all or nearly all of Fox's TV and movie assets for a reported $60 billion, and it's been reported that they are very close to a deal which they could announce closing or agreeing to next week. Now, Disney has a streaming service. They want to compete with Netflix, and so they need that IP, and it would be great. They would get back.
That's why they pulled out of Netflix.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they would essentially get back the Marvel properties, but it's bigger than that. They would also get Avatar. They would also get the original Star Wars movies. So because Fox still holds the original trilogy,
I didn't know that.
they would get The Simpsons, Family Guy, FX, National Geographic. All those things. And
No
Disney
antitrust laws being violated here?
No.
None?
Right?
No.
None?
Because
No?
here's the thing.
I can't
They're
compete
not-
with that. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, but right now, Warner Brothers owns something like, through their subsidiaries, own something like 80% of the content that you see out there. So they're getting some high profile content, but they're not getting everything. And this is not this wouldn't change the market. Right? It's not a thing when you're talking about movies and art and things like that. It's not the same thing as like a phone company merger. But anyway.
Follow the money.
Right. Following the money, we understand that, and we're looking at the deal and we're saying that Fox wants to primarily focus on their core business, or what they want to be their core business, because they don't feel like they can compete in the TV and movie space. They want to focus on news and sports. Now, I feel like the whole sports thing is only there so this thing doesn't really fall on the nose. I think Fox wants to really focus on the news entity. And with the new relaxing of the FCC rules about broadcast ownership, our good buddy Ajit Pai,
we all want to punch
AP,
in the face.
they've now relaxed these rules, which before a broadcast company could not own two broadcast networks, and they also could not own a broadcast network and a newspaper and a radio station in the same locality. That is no longer the case. And now we see companies like Sinclair, the Sinclair Group, rising up and buying up broadcast networks and newspapers in red states, sort of controlling the flow of information. Now, I think that Fox wants to be in the Sinclair game, and what would Fox do with a $60 billion war chest? If they're saying
with
they
$60 billion, and you were also a
invest in more
propagator
Fox
of
News.
Push their
bias
right wing agenda into the coast, into the west, into the east. I don't
Rupert
know.
Murdoch knows no limits, but he's an evil genius too.
Now, one could argue that in this new dystopian future, where there's no more free information, that maybe we'll need the escapism that Disney will provide us.
Mm-hmm.
But you know,
Plug me right in like the Matrix.
at least that one time we'll get that Avengers versus Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah, we'll have Avengers versus Fantastic Four while the world is burning from nuclear radiation.
Yeah.
But we won't know it because they won't show it on TV. It'll be kind of just like in the end of Fahrenheit 451, where they're just watching all these things happen, and they don't care about the fact they're going to war, and the whole city explodes, and no one even knew it was coming.
Yeah, and I really have nothing else to add other than I think it was very perceptive of you to pick up on that.
I do too. That was very
because
perceptive.
I was very caught up, like you said, with the excitement of
I'm
it.
still caught up in that shit.
No, hell yeah.
I'm just saying.
No, but then
and some people would argue it's worth it.
Yeah, no, but that you were able to get like behind that, I think, fucking A, like good, that's awesome. And I didn't look at it that way. It kind of sucks not to look at it that way. But yeah, so I have nothing really to add to that.
So your honorable mention now.
I really don't have one this week. I think we should.
You have no honor, sir.
Oh, what, the Eagles thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there was a really...
I can't be the one that brings it up.
Because you're an Eagles
That's
fan.
a bias.
All right, so it's just real quick. There was a really good article out on Bleacher Report by Mike Tanier. If you guys want to read it, anyone out there, it's called "The NFL's Wokest Team Faces Ultimate Test of Its Resolve on and Off the Field." I'm not going to get into it. The whole article basically is just highlighting the fact that a lot of the players within the Eagles organization, a lot of them being black players, there's some white players also involved, are very, very socially active within their community, within Philadelphia, some of their hometowns, and they're not, just advocating for you think they would be, like the Colin Kaepernick. They're doing everything. And aside from that, just reading the article, seeing how these young men were driven, it made me think that in the climate of today's culture where it helps to be a celebrity and then get into politics, that maybe this would be a good avenue for young, rich, educated black men to get into politics. A lot of them have degrees. They've gone to good universities. They're doing the homework while they're on the team. NFL careers end between the ages of 30 and 35 for most players, 40 if you're Tom fucking Brady. But
if you haven't been hit in the head too many times, you could be president.
But all I'm saying is, Steve wanted me to point out, and it's a good thing to point out, that I don't think just because you're a celebrity and you're a public face that means you're qualified to hold office. I'm not saying that. I just think that in a day and age of when money is the end all be all in politics, and if you don't have it, you can't run, that this would be a good avenue for minorities, especially these young black men, to get into the political game if they want. After their careers are over, they have the funds for it. They're using their stature and their status within the community to push for what they believe in while they're playing, and they have a whole life left ahead of them after they retire. And we need more minorities in office to help push forward and usher in the new era, because right now the country is divided almost equally within race. We're not represented equally within our government at all. And this shouldn't be the only way young black men get into it, but I just saw it as a good avenue. And I was touched by the reporting, just the way that these men are very just driven and they're passionate. It's nice to see. I think it's cool to see that now it's become cool to be socially active, where maybe 2 decades ago, these young black men doing this would have been, they're sellouts, this shit's whack, or maybe we wouldn't have seen it as something good. And then right now they're seeing that their role in their community is needed, and they're doing something with it. And I was touched by it, and I just wanted to share that with you guys and with our viewers.
It's worth it to note that not everybody on the Eagles team is from Philadelphia.
No, I know. That's what I said with their hometowns
I think that
also.
if they end up being, into politics, there should be a proposal to change the middle of the week to Wednesday.
Why?
Because Wednesday, Carson Wentz.
Oh.
It's not like it would require that many letters changing.
Oh man.
Anyway,
Anyway,
before I get into my honorable mention and then the end of the show, I just want to also mention again, anybody watching, anything like that, if you have any questions, you want to briefly bring up something you think we should talk about, please throw it in there. And Steve is always paying attention to the feed.
I'm mostly paying attention.
Mostly always paying attention to the feed. 90% of the time, he's always paying attention. I guess my honorable mention topic to touch on real quick would be the fact that the House passed the concealed carry reciprocity bill, their version of it. And again, this is a bill that says that if a state has a concealed carry permit and you're from that state and you go to another state that does not, that state must then recognize it, basically using a federal law to force states to recognize laws from another state. I personally believe, and I've only had a couple semesters of constitutional law, although my mentors and teachers are some of the smartest, most brilliant, and educated people that I know, that even though the 10th Amendment is virtually toothless, this is probably one of the first times I've ever seen, like, this is a clear violation of it, where you're forcing other states who have passed their own laws to accept the laws of another state. This isn't a federal law saying all concealed carry permits are okay. This is a law saying that states must reciprocally recognize the concealed carry permits of another state. So again, it's forcing states to do things at the will of other states rather than being a general federal law, which is legal by the Constitution, that they probably could push something through, like the national assault rifle ban. Like that's a ban that applies every state equally.
Yep.
This is a law that disproportionately and unequally affects people from different states, where I, from New Jersey, can not get a concealed carry permit unless I'm former police or military or my life is directly threatened. But someone from Texas or Arizona or these states that don't even have requirements, you can just get a gun and carry it, can come to New Jersey and thus carry their gun around. You get situations where a police officer might see that, waving a gun in a hotel room because you're from Texas and I love my gun, or from whatever state you are and you love your gun, you want to show it, and a police officer sees that, or a new resident of New Jersey not used to seeing guns being blatantly displayed might call something in, police raid with SWAT, they think a terrorist attack is happening, and bam, that person dies. And then the NRA is all up in arms about that kind of a thing. They don't care about the fact that we have certain laws in these highly populated, dense states like New York, New Jersey, California, places where there's huge, massive communities of people on top of each other. We don't need guns everywhere. I mean, I get it when you're in Texas and stuff and police are 15, 20 minutes away at best, going 80 miles an hour down the interstate. I can understand how you'd want to be armed and be able to protect yourself, but it is not necessary in places like this, and we have gun laws for a reason. There's state laws working within the Second Amendment that have been upheld and been on the books for a long time, and I don't think that this is either safe or moral or right. This is a direct violation of the 10th Amendment. This is something that I hope, I would love to be even a part of it, that would get challenged in federal court, because I'd love for the Supreme Court to have to show that this somehow is okay, but other things like national bans on rifles or background checks or something like that is somehow a violation. This is a huge abrogation of the moral authority of Congress. They are bowing to the will of the NRA. They are bowing to donors and to these outside groups that have no interest in protecting anybody or caring about anybody. They want to boost gun sales. They want to boost their Republican mantra and their own egos. It's just
pandering to the NRA.
Absolutely disgusting. Yeah. And again, I must reiterate, this is a huge violation of the 10th Amendment of states' rights.
Yep. This
is not something that the GOP is normally used to. They're going against states' rights. I think that it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
All right. I don't think I have anything to add to that. It was all well said, and it just shows the hypocrisy of the GOP once again. But with that being said, I think we're all ready to wrap up.
Unless anybody has any questions. Do you have any questions from the peanut gallery,
no,
you would say?
There was one that Josh threw out, but I don't want to bring it up now because it's going to open up a can of worms unless you guys want it.
What did it say? I didn't get to read it.
He sent it to me privately.
I demand freedom of information.
He said that to the question about the cake and the baker, that he disagreed with us because he says that he feels that if there was a black baker and Klansman walked in his Klansman regalia and asked him to bake a cake for his son's birthday party, would the black baker have the right to refuse him service?
He, according to the information, he could make them the cake. He just wouldn't have to put anything offensive on it. He'd still make the cake. Just leave it blank. Let him put the stuff on.
I get it. I still
here's
think
the thing: the
legally
KKK is not a group. Is not a protected group as it pertains to civil rights.
Okay,
gay people are, as well as black people and other minorities. So no, that wouldn't work, and that argument doesn't really hold up.
What if? And I'm just playing devil's advocate again. What if just for a second, then he didn't walk in with his KKK regalia? You just know him from town and you know he's a fucking racist, but he just so happens to want to walk into your bakery that day and order something from you. He's not wearing anything that indicates he's a American citizen protected under American
He is.
rights.
And I think you
if
still have
he's
to make
not
him a cake.
asking you if he's not asking you to make a cake that supports a hate group, which is not protected under the Civil Rights
Then
Act,
you say the baker
then
should
yes.
do it. Okay, cool. And then that's it. That's
I
all.
agree,
That's-
yeah, the baker
Whether you
should-
want to spit in the cake or not, that's a
Yeah.
completely different argument.
The
but-
baker should do it, but
Yeah.
just like I said, if
Okay.
you force
and he cannot come in and say this is for a KKK party. I maybe can, I don't know, but it's not the same thing. It's just not a protected class.
honestly, I think Jack Phillips would probably make the cake for them. But, because KKK is known as a very pro-Christian, pro-white group. But, just like I said, Jack Phillips would probably throw a laxative
All
in
I
the cake if he
know
was
is
forced to
this
make
is
one
what
for
I
a gay
mean. This is
couple.
what I'm saying. If I was a baker and a KKK member came in and asked me to make the cake, I would have been like, "Oh yes, you came to the right place."
You're gonna be shitting for weeks after I'm done with you.
Do
but anyways,
enjoy that styrofoam cake.
Yeah,
You
but,
didn't say it had to be edible.
Nope. But great show, guys.
Yeah, I mean, everybody. Did
Yeah.
Good job, champ.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, good job, champs.
So I'm gonna take Steve's role today. Where can we find you, Steve?
Oh, where can you find me? You
Yeah.
can find me at your favorite podcast network, as long as it's not Snapchat, at Steve A.M. Johnson.
And anything you want to throw out about On the Reel? Any upcoming episodes?
Yeah. So this week is the mid-season finale for Walking Dead. That is sort of probably our biggest show. We're going to do our live reactions right after the show. And we're going to have our news show, which we're going to try to change the format up a little bit this week. You'll have to tune in to find out. But on that
Sweet.
show, we're going to be talking about the shakeup at Warner Brothers. Some people got fired, some people got demoted after the underperformance of Justice League.
Deservedly so.
Battle Angel Alita, the trailer has come out, and they have a very interesting approach to whitewashing.
Okay.
Where they're using CG instead of an Asian person, but that's again a conversation for the show. The trailer has come out for, and we talked about this a little bit before, for All the Money in the World, where Kevin Spacey was replaced by Christopher Plummer,
Yeah,
and
I've
I
seen
think
it now.
Christopher Plummer wore
Looks
it better.
great. Looks great.
And there's a little more of this Marvel Fox deal that we'll get into. So
Tune in.
a lot going on.
All right, cool. And where can we find you, Joe?
You can find me at all this stuff here right below my face.
How about for the audio
For
listeners?
for the audio listeners, you better be able to find me by my voice. I'm very unique.
Joseph S. Oswald.
Yeah.
At Joseph S. Oswald.
Joseph S.
Yeah,
Oswald.
and you
And
can
you can do
find
that on Twitter and all that fun stuff too. And hey, don't forget to subscribe to the R Network.
Please.
R Squared
Yeah,
Network.
R Squared Network. Yeah,
Gotta
And,
subscribe. You gotta get the little push notifications.
Yeah,
Plus, we
click,
want our
like-
own URL, so we need at least 100.
Yeah, and if you like watching our show every week, some people have been tuning in repeatedly. Thank you very much to my brother Ronnie. He's been here the whole time. Share it with your friends.
Yeah.
Put it out there to
Get a
people we might not
discussion
know.
going.
And you can find me at J Martinez Jr. on Twitter, Facebook, everything. And yeah, just make sure to click,
So I was
like, follow,
thinking of
subscribe,
Nelly in
all
my
of the
head.
above. Nelly.
I was thinking of Nelly when you said you can find me.
St. Louis rolling
and
them
in the
down,
next couple
smoking
weeks,
them
we will
slow.
probably have a couple guests on the show. My friend Anthony,
Hi-oh.
who might
Yep.
end up being one of the next episodes on the R Squared Network, a sports, possibly music podcast. So we certainly hope. And a shout out to my friend Anthony if you are watching or will watch
Yeah.
later.
And Greg will be in later this month. I think
Later
also
this
my
month,
friend
yeah.
Greg, who's
We get
again,
5
good
shows
point.
this month, so that's
Yeah,
good.
but
We
anyway,
have
so
space.
thank you very much,
Thank
everyone,
you.
for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.
All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye.